What's going on, everybody? Sean Bock of HawkeyeInsider.com on the 24/7 Sports CBS Network, reporting to you here live from Simon Scott Assembly Hall in Bloomington, Indiana, following Iowa's 74-57 win over the Indiana Hoosiers, as the Hawkeyes snapped their three-game losing streak, moved to 13-5 on the season and 3-4 in Big Ten play. And man, oh man, if you're a member on the site at HawkeyeInsider.com and read the previews, have followed along on social media, just really been a fan of this team in general. You know how important this game was for Iowa to come out on top, considering the struggles that they've had the last three games, and really in Big Ten play as a whole, and really just on the road, and the inability to close out games. And to see this team finally, be able to close out a win on the road and be able to close out some of these tough games on the road, and usually a very difficult road environment. I mean, I know Indiana doesn't really have the luster that maybe it once did, and they're still trying to fight back, and obviously the attention on the college football or the football team has been not necessarily a distraction, but something that maybe takes away from some of the interest with basketball and just kind of the struggles that they've had. But it's still a road victory, and that's something that is very important within the metrics in making the NCAA tournament, and really was something that Iowa struggled to get over the hump with. And we've seen with Iowa's struggles that they've had in Big Ten play on the road. I mean, losing big at Michigan State, losing to Minnesota in a game that you probably could have won, and then having chances to win at Purdue but not being able to come out on top, and a very good Purdue team too. But just not being able to come out on top. And Indiana was a very similar team in terms of resume as Iowa. They had similar losses. Both lost at Michigan State big. Both lost close to Minnesota on the road. And then also, just had a very similar, we're pretty close in the net with each other, and just had some, very just didn't really have a signature win on this, this season yet. And Iowa was able to finally get one, and one that really came at an important time too, considering the chances that the stretch upcoming. I mean, it's a very winnable stretch that they have coming. They play at home against Rutgers coming up on Tuesday, and then have an 8-day break, and then have a series of very winnable games both at home and on the road. But to be able to get this win in a road environment like Assembly Hall, where it's not easy. I mean, I think the whole narrative around this Iowa team has been, how are they going to be able to win on the road going from the Missouri Valley to the Big Ten? Because it's a much different, it's much different going to the Big Ten and playing in these types of arenas and these types of atmospheres, and being able to go and win these types of games. And Iowa was finally able to get that one that they were looking for, to get over that hump in a sense, and we're finally able to do it in Bloomington. And a big reason for that was Bennett. I mean, Bennett was fantastic for Iowa today. I believe he had the stats right in front of me actually. Finished with 27 points, 5 assists, 7 of 13 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3. And I think his two most important shots of the game too were in the second half when he hit those threes. When Indiana seemed like they had some fight left in them, Sturts was able to navigate and separate himself and be able to hit down some big shots. He had some big assists as well. Just was in total control of the game. And that's really, we saw what happened on Wednesday in West Lafayette when Braden Smith had total control of the game in the second half. Sturts kind of had that same feel to him. He was really good against Indiana's drop coverage, really good at being able to draw fouls. That's one thing that he made a big, him, Ben McCollum, and the rest of the Iowa staff and the rest of the Iowa team made a very big point of the last couple of days is, being able to draw these types of fouls, being able to get some of these fouls that some of these other guards who are more experienced in the Big Ten are able to get. And Sturts maybe wasn't getting those, albeit he was struggling with foul trouble in those games, and really his impact wasn't as high as it probably could have been. But for him to be able to, navigate those fouls and be able to, get into the lane and draw those types of fouls, and really just have total control of the game. I mean, really frustrated Connor Enright. I know Enright, the Indiana guard, was getting into him a little bit. Taking Conaway was getting into him a little bit. But Sturts really just had total control of the game. And, he was a big reason why Iowa was so efficient as they were. The Hawkeyes scored 1.3 points per possession. And really, the free throw line was huge. I mean, Iowa was 21 of 23 from the free throw line. Tavion Banks was fantastic, 9 of 9. Sturts was 10 of 11. I think the only miss was Cam Maniau. Tate Sage was 2 of 2. And it's gone this far, and I haven't talked about Tavion Banks really, because Banks was very, very good in this game. Being able to relocate off the ball, really good cutter, was 5 of 8 at the rim, had some pretty tough finishes, had some really tough catches and, was able to put it in, and, also had 8 rebounds. I know Iowa kind of, was a little iffy on the defensive glass in this game. I think that's something that they really wanted to clean up, or would have really liked to clean up. Indiana just wasn't really able to take total advantage of it. But Banks was fantastic, and he's coming off some very, very productive outings. Obviously, he was very good against Illinois, where he, was coming off the bench and battling the flu bug. He had a pretty, crazy story about how he was really just, like, during his sickness, he was only getting like 3 hours of sleep, and, was throwing up after the game, and he's just like, man, you just got to do it. You just got to put your head down and work, and, it's not an excuse. I mean, I know obviously though you have your limitations with those physical things, but it's all mental. You got to be able to unlock things mentally, and, he also was a big reason why Iowa was able to slow down Tatum Conaway, the Indiana guard, who, put on a clink in the first half with his ability to get to the rim, and started the second half too, his ability to get to the rim and just kind of go. Like, he wasn't really even operating ball screens. Iowa's help side and their coverage was just kind of bad in those situations. And, that's something that Ben McCollum would love to clean up and, really be a focal point moving forward, especially on some of these guys who are able to get to the basket well, like Conaway. But really, I think the biggest stretch for Iowa was definitely in the second half when they were able to expand their lead out. I think Indiana cut it to like 5 or 6 in the second half, and Bennett Sturtz even said after the game, he thought to himself, like, oh boy, here we go again. But Iowa's ability to have that experience, or having that experience in some of those close games in the last couple of weeks, and they weren't able to come out on top. I think that experience really helped them in this game, really helped them propel them forward in this one, and being able to kind of, just stay calm and, be able to make those winning plays late in the game. And we talk about the Sturtz 3, Tavion Banks had a big bucket, Sturtz had a 3, and then Alvaro Figueres, who Ben McCollum mentioned in the second half too. I mean, Alvaro, has kind of been up and down. He didn't really have the best stretch in the first half. He had a really rough stretch. I think it was 3 straight possessions. He was kind of the guy where you're like, Alvaro, man, like, what are you doing? Kind of just being the guy that, I know people would kind of point the finger at, but he was able to really come back well in the second half, and he didn't score any points in the second half, but he had 2 assists, he had 2 rebounds, he was able to make some pretty good plays at the rim, pretty good plays in coverage too. Obviously had that pass to Banks for the big bucket and the foul. It was just really, really solid in making those winning plays and not trying to force the issue too much. And he's such an X factor for this team. I mean, he doesn't need to score, but it would obviously be nice if he could be a little more efficient scoring, but he just needs to stay composed and needs to be able to, play within himself and play, a complete game and play like, his role. Like, he doesn't have to be the star. He just needs to be able to settle in, play defense, and Bennett Sturtz mentioned it after the game too, that, they don't have a guy like Alvaro on their team that can really protect the rim like he can with his length, and also, play off the ball like he can offensively with his length and his shot making ability. If he can just stay engaged and make those winning plays and be extremely active on both ends of the floor, and just be consistent, that's really going to take this team to that next step and be able to, get them some of these wins that they really need in Big Ten play. And I also thought Tate Sage was fantastic for Iowa. I think he was plus 23 on the night, the second highest. I mean, Cale Combs was plus 24. He obviously had a quieter game, but had some pretty big buckets, I think, in both the first. I know he had a couple in the he had that 3 in the first half, and then he had the floater in the second half. But also Iowa, I think one of the things that they were able to really do defensively is, the on-ball perimeter defense, and just, not just on-ball perimeter defense, but being able to get some of their shooters frustrated and run them off the three-point line. They were able to make Lamar Wilkerson, Indiana's leading scorer, best player, one of the best shooters in the country. They were able to make him a driver, make him to shoot some really, uncomfortable shots, get some really uncomfortable catches. Tucker DeVries wasn't really a huge factor. He was 2 of 9 from the field, finished with 7 points. Tatum Conaway was obviously the story for this Indiana team. Offensively, he was really the entire offense. Sam Alexis had some really good moments for the Hoosiers as well. Just being able to dive to the rim, also just making kind of those energy hustle plays. And I think, Iowa just having that kind of complete performance. I mean, we're going to talk about Sturtz and Banks for sure, but guys like Cale Combs, Cam Manyao had that really big block in the first half. I believe that was the first half. Let me look at that again, sorry. That was in the first half, yep, to kind of spark that run. He was plus 16 in the first half. Tate Sage, like I said, was plus 23, had a couple of really nice shots, hit that nice 3 as well. We talk about Alvaro being engaged in the second half. Cooper Koch, I thought, he's still needing to get it going offensively and needs to, be able to uptick in that sense. And, he's kind of in a little slump right now, which that always happens with the freshman. But his defensive impact, I thought, was really important. He was really good off the ball, communicating, being active, and, kind of closing out on shooters too. And, making sure guys get tough catches and just doing the little things on the court as well. So, just really a group effort, like overall. I mean, Isaiah Howard, I think struggled a little bit on Connerway. He's going to be able to bounce back. But I think you look at the possessions as well. This was Iowa's lowest possession game of the season, 58. They were able to score 74 points, average scoring 1.3 points per possession. That was I believe that's the second best. That is actually the best offensive performance that Iowa has had in the Big Ten. They scored 1.387 points per possession against Southeast Missouri State. So they scored 1.382 against Indiana today, and obviously a lot of that was from the free throw line, but just that efficiency I thought was really important, and being able to pick out those matchups and being able to pick out those things on the offensive end that Indiana really has struggles with, and they were able to expose them in those senses, because I don't think Indiana is a good enough defensive team to be able to defend for the entire shot clock, and Iowa was really able to expose that. And that's intentional coaching, and that's just understanding the matchups and understanding and being able to execute it. This team did just that, and hopefully it's a momentum builder going forward, because you have Rutgers on Tuesday at home. That's obviously a very winnable game. Rutgers is probably the worst team in the Big Ten. You have USC at home, and then you go on the road at Oregon and Washington, which are two very important games. I mean, Washington could figure it out a little bit more if they're able to get healthy. Oregon's obviously battled the injury bug this year. And then you have home game. You have a home game against Northwestern. Then you go on the road at Maryland. So that's a really important stretch where, you could see one loss in that stretch maybe, or you could see all wins. Like, it really is, like, those are the types of games that you have to win and you have to take advantage of, because, man, it gets tough after that. Then you have Purdue on the road on the 14th of Valentine's Day. You have Nebraska, or I don't know if it's technically Valentine's Day. Maybe it's not Valentine's Day. I don't know. I just saw the 14th and I think Valentine's Day. Then you have Nebraska at home, so that's a really tough back-to-back, two of the best teams in the Big Ten. You have Wisconsin on the road, then you play Ohio State at home, you go on the road at Penn State, which is never really an easy place to play. Then you close out the season at home against Michigan, on the road against Nebraska. So there are a lot of quadrant one opportunities within that stretch. But really those road games too. I mean, obviously you got to take care of business at home against Rutgers and USC, but those road games against Oregon and Washington could really improve you with the win against the bubble, or win above the bubble, which is a really important metric for the NCAA tournament this season. And being able to get that would be really big for this Iowa team. So yeah, enough of me rambling here. I mean, it feels like kind of a weight off the shoulder for this group. I mean, being able to finally get one on the road, finally get one in Big Ten play on the road is really important. And obviously these wins go a long way. Iowa is officially 1.3 wins above the bubble right now, which is, coming out of that Purdue game, they were 0.6, and coming out of the UCLA game, they were 1.4. So they're able to, even though with that 3-game losing streak, they're able to get back to where they were. And, like I said, gotta take care of business. But this is one of those games where I think you kind of envisioned what this Iowa team could look like, and, how they were able to match up well against some of, these opponents, especially a team like Indiana, where, they have some flaws with the roster construction, how they're built, but Iowa was able to use its continuity, use its kind of, really ride its horse in Bennett starts, and that ultimately made a big difference in this game. So Sean Bock here, reporting from Assembly Hall. I'll have my rewatch notes up Sunday morning, and then content to come in the next couple days as Iowa continues to continue march through its first season under Ben McCollum, and potentially this could be a really good momentum builder for things going forward. So thank you guys again for listening, and appreciate all the support, and continue to be locked in to HawkeyeInsider.com.